Many leaders are ineffective not because they lack talent, they're ineffective because they stop growing. And they stop growing because they stop learning. We tend to believe that the longer we do something, the better we get at it. Shouldn't leadership be the same thing? More experience as a leader means being a better leader? But what if experience isn't the same as growth? What if you have simply become very good at repeating the same year of leadership over and over again? If you're a leader, this final video with CEO Wilfrid Foo is for you. In less than 3 minutes of the interview, he shared one simple idea that hopefully changes how you think about leadership growth. Towards the end of our interview, I asked Wilfrid a very straightforward question. If you could go back and give advice to your younger self, what would you say? Now, I thought he might say something about communication, decision making, vision, or strategy. Instead, he said, remember the tool belt. At first, I thought it was just a nice analogy. But as I reflected on it, I realized he wasn't talking about leadership tools, techniques, or methods at all. He was talking about leadership growth and why so many leaders stop growing. You see, many people think leadership growth happens naturally. You become a supervisor, a manager, a senior manager, and eventually a head of department. Through those years, surely your leadership skills would have improved along the way. But that's not always true. I've met leaders who have led people for 15 years. And I've met leaders who have led people for 4 years. Sometimes the leader with 4 years of experience is actually the stronger leader in terms of being able to articulate how to go about creating desired outcomes through their leadership. Why? Because leadership isn't necessarily measured by time or experience. It's measured by personal growth. It's measured by whether you have been expanding your thinking, people management skills, leadership communication, judgement, EQ, and your ability to handle different situations. That's why some leaders keep growing while others quietly stop. Not because one side is smarter or works harder, it's just that for the other side, they stopped learning. And that's exactly what Wilfrid's tool belt analogy helps us understand. And so in this video, I want to share 3 leadership observations from the last segment with Wilfrid. If you're serious about scaling your leadership, especially to lead as a middle manager, head of department, or a business unit leader, then I think these 3 ideas are worth reflecting on. So, if you could give advice to a much younger self, a much younger you, and it's let's just break it up into the two stages. So you're now leading a team of individual contributors.
Yeah.
If you could go back and do it again, all right, or maybe go back and give advice, what would be the difference?
Okay. To touch on this topic as succinctly and as mnemonically memorable for anyone, just remember the tool belt. Okay?
Yeah.
You start out with only acquiring the belt, and that's what the school gave you. The university gave you a belt. Okay? And when you're talking to individual contributors, then you learn about what the hammer can do, the screwdriver can do, what the saw can do. Okay? As you progress, the tools become sharper. They are about shaping the organization. And to use and wield these tools needs finesse. You need skill in understanding the damage and the productivity or the benefits it can bring. But they are more and more difficult tools because you're dealing with more and more people. Okay? So just use the analogy of the tool belt.
Wilfrid starts off by talking about how schooling gives us that leadership tool belt. It's a basic belt, and it's up to us to fill it. Now, that's a very different way of thinking about leadership. Many people spend their early leadership journey trying to discover their leadership style. Am I a task-focused, creative, people-focused, or process-driven person? That's a good question to start with because it's one of the tools on your leadership tool belt. Or perhaps a better question to ask is, do you have the various leadership tools to work well with those different personalities? Think about it. If the only leadership tool you have is giving instruction like a boss, then every problem looks like it needs more instructions. If your only tool is coaching, then you will try to coach every situation. And if your only tool is being nice, then eventually you will discover that not every difficult conversation can be solved by being nice. Not because leaders don't care, but because they rely on the same tool and are not aware of the consequences it has when using the same tool in different situations for those they lead. With growth, leaders learn what each tool can do because every tool in your leadership tool belt has a purpose. Different people need different approaches, and different situations require different leadership strategies. Different team members require different types of conversations. That's what leadership development really looks like. Not becoming someone different, but expanding your leadership tool belt so you know which tool, method, or strategy to apply when facing a particular situation or person. One of the simplest questions you can ask yourself is this: what leadership situation am I currently struggling with? And what tool do I need to be effective in dealing with the people involved? But here's the interesting part. Having more tools in your leadership tool belt doesn't automatically make you a better leader, because the next challenge is in actually knowing which tool to use and when.
Whatever situation you're in, understand whether you're learning how to use the hammer or the knife. Okay, the more senior you go, the knife will become the tool that you need to wield more carefully. And what kind of knife? Okay, because you're shaping an outcome based on longer term agendas.
Yes. Wilfrid really hit the spot here when he said that as a leader, you are shaping outcomes. Because the higher you go up in management, the bigger your impact on the organization becomes. For example, when you're leading yourself as a team member or individual contributor, a poor decision from you tends to mostly impact you and other stakeholders in which that decision has an impact on. When you are a team leader leading 5 team members, a poor decision affects 5 lives, and perhaps the lives of the families that depend on the income of those 5 team members and other secondary stakeholders. When you are a department head leading 50 people, the same poor decision affects 50 lives, plus other stakeholders. When you're leading an entire department of tens of employees, your leadership shapes your workplace culture. You shape that workplace culture through the way you drive performance, engage employees, identify desired workplace behaviors, align all your team towards a common vision, direction, and agenda. That's why leadership feels harder as you move up. Not because there are more meetings in your calendar, but because your decisions carry more weight. The consequences become bigger and more long-term. And there seems to be almost no immediate or direct effect between your personal output and that of your department. For example, as a team member, you know your personal output gives you certain results and outcomes. As a team leader, you can create a functional team environment by focusing on performance, conflict, team synergy, building rapport, etc. You can still see how your personal leadership output can influence team productivity. But as a department head, all you can really do is set the direction and trust that the leaders under you can effectively execute. And you won't know if what you're doing is really working or not until some time later when you get the data. That's why Wilfrid talks about finesse. He even uses the example of a knife because the more senior you become, the more careful you have to use it. He's talking about judgement. Middle managers and senior leaders aren't defined by having more authority. They're defined by their better judgment, knowing when to step in or back, coach, challenge, or wait, whether they're dealing with team members or team leaders. Leadership becomes less about doing and more about choosing what leadership tools to use to create the effects you want to see in your team or department. If you're finding these ideas useful for your own leadership thinking, I would appreciate it if you take a second to like this video. It tells YouTube that these conversations around leadership, management skills, and leadership development are useful, and it will help more leaders discover the channel. Now, Let's move on to what I think is the biggest lesson from Wilfrid's interview.
Yeah. So, any closing thoughts? I think leadership is a great journey. It's a wonderful adventure. It's all the wonderful things that storybooks tell you. But the reality is, if you choose not to accumulate the tools in your tool belt because of fear of, I'm not sure whether I can do the next job. I don't know if I want to leave Singapore. I don't know if I want to change companies. Understand that these are all but illusions. If you're not going to do it, someone else is going to do it. And they're going to find their way upwards much faster than you. And they'll probably be more skilled than you as well. So choose. There's no right or wrong. It depends on what you view as happiness in your life. But it is all about accumulating those tools in your tool belt that are extremely important.
Well done, Wilfrid. Thank you very much for your time.
At this point, Wilfrid took the interview in a different direction. He stopped talking about the leadership tool belt and started talking about people, their fears, happiness, and choices. Listen carefully to the examples he gave. I'm not sure whether I can do the next job. I don't know if I want to change companies. I don't know if I want to leave Singapore. Those aren't leadership challenges. They're challenges about fear, happiness, and choices. Every one of us have experienced them. I've worked with many team leaders who had previously worked hard to get that promotion. And once they do get it, they quickly realize leadership isn't what they thought it would be. The demands, stresses of dealing with the emotions of people, having to constantly develop team members only to see them leave after a few years. This can get tiring, and many want an easier, less stressful job. But then they are stuck in their careers because stepping down could have negative consequences for their careers. And so they stay as a team leader for many years because they're kind of trapped between multiple demands of family, personal life, career advancement, etc. Maybe you've hesitated before applying for a bigger role, or you are at a comfortable spot right now in life and don't want to disrupt it. Or perhaps you have convinced yourself that now isn't the right time. Wilfrid calls these illusions, and he does make a point here. Not everyone should chase promotions or be a leader. The key point here is to choose intentionally and with both eyes wide open. If leadership is the path you want, then commit to growing, learning, and adding tools to your leadership tool belt. Because if not, then after a few years, you're going to be obsolete as a leader and surpassed by someone else who is willing to be one. And you probably might not be very effective as a leader, which only makes life harder for those you lead. I've worked with many participants over the years. Despite similar backgrounds and experiences, and assuming all other things being equal, some have moved up into leadership positions, while others have continued to be team members. It's all about choices. There's no right or wrong. It depends on what happiness means to you. Because success isn't about becoming the most senior person in the room. It's about becoming intentional about the life you want, and if leadership is part of that life. So let's bring everything together. The first lesson is this. Great leaders keep expanding their leadership tool belt. They don't rely on one leadership style. They keep learning. The second lesson is that leadership becomes harder as your decisions affect more people. As your influence grows, so must your judgment as well. And finally, leadership is a choice. Growth and learning as a leader are also choices. Nobody accidentally becomes an effective leader. You learn how to be one a day at a time. In the end, for me, when I first heard about the tool belt analogy, I thought that Wilfrid was talking about leadership techniques. But actually, he's talking about the humility to admit that no matter how experienced we become as leaders, there's always another tool to learn, always another conversation to improve, and other ways to be an effective leader. I think that's why some leaders keep growing, or others stop. Leadership isn't complicated, but growth requires us to stay humble, and teachable. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you. I'd really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps YouTube understand that this content is valuable, and you'll make it more likely that future simple leadership videos are recommended to you. And if you'd like to go one step further, I also created a free mailing list where I will send you my latest leadership videos directly to your mailbox, together with a simple one-page worksheet to help you apply the ideas from each video into your own leadership journey. You can find the link in the description below. Finally, I'd love to hear from you. What's one leadership tool you've developed over the past few years? Or what's one area where you feel you've stopped growing? Share it in the comments below. One of the things I enjoy most about this community is seeing leaders realize they're not alone in their struggles. Your experience might be exactly what another leader needs to hear today. And since we're on the topic of leadership growth, what happens when leadership fails to keep pace with the growth of an organization? Click here to find out.